What's up, everybody? I probably need a better intro, but I wanted to talk today about why I thought Scotty Kilmer was wrong about Mercedes-Benz. And he mentioned like 3 or 4 points about Mercedes and why you shouldn't buy one. And I just wanted to go through them. The first is depreciation. The fact of the matter is these aren't Toyotas. They're going to depreciate. But a lot of cars depreciate. And Mercedes is probably going to depreciate a lot less than a comparable Jaguar or Land Rover, for example, and I would guess even a comparable BMW. So like, you know, let's take a G-Wagon versus a Range Rover, full fat. You know, the Range Rover full fat is going to depreciate like 30 to 40% in its first year. The full fat is not going to be as reliable. You know, it's just not. It's going to be probably a little more luxurious. I like the way they drive a little better. The interiors are okay. Well, these cars, you can't compare like buying like, I don't know, like a Mercedes to like buying like a pound of gold or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's a completely different thing. Now, you might be able to compare it to like buying a Lexus. I guess it's a fair comparison. But if we're talking about European cars, and I think it's a good group to put it in, let's talk about European cars. You know what I mean? And I would guess that Mercedes probably depreciate the least out of the European cars in its class. And in its class, I mean upper end BMWs and, you know, up to the Bentleys, or at least that's what they taught us in business school, is that Mercedes-Benz was a market leader and actually competes more with like a Bentley than, you know, BMW, which is interesting. But yeah, comparing Mercedes against an Audi, Bentley, they're gonna depreciate probably in line, if not slightly better than those other cars. All right, the second point he brought up was something about the brakes. He said that the brakes, they don't cover the whole disc, so you have to do the pads and the rotors. Part of this I actually agree with, his critique, which is that these cars do need a lot of maintenance. Now, on the other hand, they break a lot less than the other, you know, European cars. A Jaguar is going to break a heck of a lot more than a Mercedes. Now, there were some years of really nice Jaguars and Land Rovers under Ford ownership, sort of like the late model, like 2008 to 2009, are actually pretty solid cars. But let's go right into, you know, the brakes. I'm going to flip here. The critique is that when you look at these, and this is cold, don't ever touch hot brakes, that this is going to leave a little bit of a lip here. And the fact is, he's right, it is, but do you really want to change your brake pads and not your rotors on a car like this? And I would guess you'd do a Bentley brakes, just to, as comparison, they're huge. On a Toyota, if you're just changing the brake pads, and I've done it a lot, I'm a shade tree mechanic, a lot of people call me out for it, right? If you're just changing the brake pads and you're not addressing the rotors, you might get sort of like squeaking and whatever. You know, you really want to change both at the same time. And I get it if you have like a Prius or something, or, you know, it's a day-to-day driver. Yeah, I mean, we've all been there where, you know, maybe our dollars aren't really at a point where we can do what's optimal, right? But yeah, you're going to have to maintain a Mercedes to an optimal level. You're not going to want to like mess around with it. And so at the very least, he's right. You have to change your rotors or get them ground down. But on the other hand, you really want to get them ground down or turned or whatever they call it, or changed for any car. Like, that would be the ideal for any car. So I kind of think that's a BS sort of thing. The other thing he was talking about is that there's a ton of computers. Well, yeah, these are modern cars. They have a ton of computers. Have you looked at the tuning files for these things? I mean, there must be 1,000 tables, maybe more. And like, there's tons of variants. I mean, computers slow down these cars. You know, when you compare them to like Teslas, the computers are speeding them up. when you're looking at like a car like this, these are really limited by computers in terms of, you know, it's a torque limiting ECU. And I just don't think it's a fair comparison because, you know, they've been putting a ton of computers on cars for a long time. You know, the 1990s, like Range Rovers, you know, I was in that community for a long time. Like I had a 1999 4.6 HSE Range Rover, and it had locking differentials in the rear and 33-inch, you know, BF Goodrich tires. It was a beautiful car. And I can tell you that a lot of those like computers were present even back then. So they were rebuilding those computers back then. Now, pretty solid with this. And a lot of the sensors aren't that bad. You know, like an oxygen sensor downstream is like maybe like $25 from Bosch. And I would not get the OEM ones, to be honest, for that type of thing. So I think that's sort of like a bullshit reason too. Like, again, I'm going back to this, you know, you can't compare, you got to compare apples to apples, right? You got to, there are a lot of computers on literally every other car made. And I think his take on Mercedes and European cars is wrong. I would definitely put Mercedes as the top European car in terms of, you know, fit, finish, reliability. In my experience, Mercedes is going to be the best of the European cars. And then somewhere you probably have the rest, you know what I mean? So you have like BMW and like VW and Audi, and probably VW and Audi are probably a little bit better than, you know, Porsche, VW, Audi are probably better than, you know, BMWs. And then you probably have Land Rover and Jaguar to round out, you know, the top, most reliable type of American, you know, European cars available. And then below that, I put the Maserati. All right, guys, until next time.